Happy New Year and welcome to Moderate Fantasy Violence, a podcast about 2022 and our joy that it's over. I'm Nick.
And I'm Alistair.
And as we do every single year, even through the pandemic, we are going to talk about the things we liked and disliked about both TV and film in general over the course of the year, and then we're going to break down our top fives and try and find some kind of communal MFV favourite. But before we get into the specifics and the best things of the whole year, let's talk about a couple more things we've seen slightly more recently. Alistair, what else have you consumed in the last 2 festive weeks?
Well, over the Christmas period, I've been watching a show that only just dropped, and I haven't finished it, so it's not eligible for my best TV shows of the year, and that's one of the reasons why I want to talk about it now, which is Alice in Borderland Season 2. Yeah, I watched the first season of this back in 2021. It's based on a Japanese manga. It's a Japanese TV show about this sort of young slacker guy who ends up into this weird alternate version of Tokyo where there's almost no people and you have to play these violent and quite disturbing games in order to be allowed to remain there. Basically, you kind of get shot by a laser that comes down from space if you don't play these games, and they give you passports to survive there. Seems like a bizarre premise, but it really does work. It's very, very tense. The games are, really, really interesting, bizarre, cruel, and there's a lot of tension in each of them. Now they're into the second series, they're starting to uncover the mystery of what is this weird version of Tokyo? Why are they there? And how do they get home? Yeah,
I've not watched this. I know you're a big fan. I see a lot of adverts for it on Netflix, and it always has a very strong aesthetic going on. There's always a lot of playing card shit, which is obviously a callback to the original Alice in Wonderland. And it does always look like it'll be fun. I assume quite violent.
Yeah, pretty violent, yeah. And also quite emotionally violent. There's a lot of people betraying each other, things like that. They've managed to successfully cultivate that air that I think both Game of Thrones and Walking Dead managed to achieve, of any character can be killed at any point. There's kind of the two core main characters, I guess, are sort of safe, but a lot of the supporting characters, sometimes you really get to like someone in their little group of people going around doing these games, and then will be just sort of summarily just killed off. So lots of violence, lots of unexpected deaths. Someone you think is going to be a main character just gets their head blown off.
I guess this maybe seems like it's been slightly overshadowed by Squid Game as the big violent drama from East Asia, but I have heard some good things about this as well. Yeah,
there's a lot of parallel in the kind of violent versions of games and stuff, and the sort of disturbing edge. I always thought that Alice in Borderland I thought was better than Squid Game, although I did really like Squid Game, and long-term listeners of the podcast will remember it was my number one TV show of last year. So it's a good show. I think Squid Game is just a bit more accessible because it kind of makes sense. Rich people are paying poor people to play horrible blood sports, whereas Alice in Borderland has this whole extra, why are they in this weird universe when everyone's gone, but there's games all over the place, and who's in control and what's it all for. I kind of like the existential, broader philosophical questions it raises, but it sort of, makes it less accessible, I suppose.
So it's bad luck for Alice in Borderlands that it's released in this sort of betwixt Christmas New Year phase, thus meaning that you haven't managed to finish it in time for this year's chart, and it won't be eligible for next one.
Yeah,
thus
exactly.
meaning it cannot beat Squid Game.
No, it cannot beat Squid Game. It was really hard to choose my top 5, so this would have just made it even more difficult. But I did want to talk about it now because I do really strongly recommend it to listeners, both the first season and the second season. I mean, the first episode, after kind of introducing the core cast of characters, it kind of launches straight into a bit of the old ultra-violence and high tension. So if you watch the first episode and you'll be hooked, or you'll be so traumatized you're like, this isn't for me. I do want to evangelize about this show as much as possible because I don't see anyone really tweeting about it or sharing anything on Instagram. It is really good, so I want to get as many people as possible to watch it so they make more of it.
Considering the lack of comparative buzz, I don't know, maybe it's huge out in its native markets, I don't know. Considering the relative lack of buzz in the media outlets I follow, I'm impressed it got a series 2, considering how cult-happy Netflix sometimes seems to be.
Yeah, exactly, I think it's doing quite well. I saw something saying it's the 4th most watched TV show on Netflix right now.
Okay, fair enough.
So maybe it's building season through season. But I don't know, if you're looking for something to fill the Squid Game-shaped hole in your life, this is perfect.
On a similar vein, and not the recommendation I was actually going to do, but I haven't quite managed to finish watching The Kingdom Exodus, which I know Alistair recommended in the last episode, in time for the chart. So for the record, that's also extremely good, but perhaps overly strictly. I haven't included it in my top 5 anyway. But no, that's very, very fun. It's like Green Wing if it was horrifically insane.
It's sort of Green Wing meets Twin Peaks.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, it's. I did finish Kingdom Exodus, and yeah, I can strongly recommend that. It's all the weirdness, all the strange goings on, the sort of bizarre humour, the kind of quite scary moments. You know, picking up the plotline 25 years on. It's it's good. Lars von Trier does it again. The ending is absolutely round the bend as well.
Yeah, no, I've only got one episode to go, and based on some of the stuff that happens in the penultimate one, it does sound like it has the potential to go absolutely bananas, so I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. So I've been watching sort of unusual and dark foreign language TV over Christmas. Nick, what have you been up to?
Well, unusually, again, I've been watching something on the conventional Christmas TV schedules on British broadcast telly. And no, it's not going to be the Ghosts Christmas special, because we've covered Ghosts recently. Although, for the record, that was very good.
It was very good.
Yeah, but so is Ghosts, so who's surprised? But yeah, the thing I watched a couple of days ago was Prince Andrew the Musical, that aired on Channel 4 a few days back over Christmas, in which a guy who I believe is well known for his musical comedy on YouTube, I think it's Kieran Hodgson, plays Prince Andrew in a series of ridiculous satirical show tunes about the various struggles he has allegedly gone through over the last year or two.
Wow, what a premise.
It's ludicrous. It's one of those things where, like I think a lot of musicals sometimes, it has a massive opening number, which I think it then possibly slightly struggles to top for the rest of the show. There's a song called I Nailed It, which he sings as a duet with Emily Maitlis, or obviously an actor playing Emily Maitlis, about how much he feels he nailed it in the famous Pizza Express Sweat interview a while back. Yeah, that's absolutely hilarious. Like, honestly, it's always worth watching that duet on YouTube and then maybe skipping the rest of the show, to be honest. The rest of it is kind of, it goes back a bit. It does a sort of quick summary version of his life, summed up in about 6 show tunes. And some of them are quite fun. But to be honest, the opening song is by far the best bit, and you wouldn't have missed a huge amount if you just watched that. But the production as a whole is interesting. It does end in a sort of weird, semi-dark, philosophical moment. I mean, kind of the problem with this is that obviously it never really fully reckons with the fact that although obviously it's in the tradition of, I guess, Britishly taking a bit of a naughty pop at the royal family, but obviously it's also a paedophile scandal. So, and it doesn't really reckon with that very much. It very much keeps the details of what Andrew's been accused of slightly off to the side, apart from a couple of cheeky mentions. It also does not bring in Diana or the Queen in a bid to somehow make this ludicrous product whilst not getting too completely destroyed by some of the more royalist branches of the media. It's a very, very strange production. I possibly applaud the fact they made it more than what they actually made, but it was a funny enough way to spend an hour while I was very tired and full of cheese over the Christmas holidays.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like a very difficult line to walk, trying to avoid libel suits. I guess things you've been accused of but not convicted of means you can probably sue for libel. And also, I guess, trying to, in the year that the Queen died, not prod the sensitive parts of the national psyche, should we put it that way? Yeah,
I'm honestly amazed that they made this and the Queen died and they still aired it. I'd have been sorely tempted to knock it back to the same May. No, they went there, as the kids say. Yeah. As the kids said about 10 years ago. So, yeah, it's a thing that exists. It's on all 4 if you want to experience it, or even, as I say, just that first song. But yeah, pretty baffling. They kept doing trailers for it throughout the Christmas season. I kept turning to my partner's relatives, who I was with at the time, and they were all just a bit, is this a real thing? Have I actually made this? Or is this just like a comedy trailer for something that someone could make? And then towards the end of the festive period, I finally gave in and decided to actually watch it and confirm it exists. And yeah, it does, doesn't it?
So, do they, I don't know, manage to elicit sympathy for Prince Andrew? There's no, like, kind of, I don't know, heartfelt, moving, slow number about his struggle in life?
No, Prince Andrew is very much played as an unaware buffoon who, I mean, honestly, again, if one were to approach it from the angle of, taking the very serious charges seriously, one might actually say that it almost lets him off a bit for his alleged crimes by portraying him more as a bit of an idiot who just sort of stumbled into the wrong place at the wrong time because he has no idea what's going on around him, rather than, anyone who might actually do something malevolent, sordid or horrendous. So there is that as well. But yes, no, it does not let Prince Andrew off in any meaningful way. He is not portrayed as ethical or intelligent at any point.
Well, it does sound interesting. Yeah, it sounds like something like from Brass Eye, I suppose, considering like paedophile jokes. I guess irreverent social satire. Maybe something that Chris Morris could have done in the past.
I gather it is part of a broader strand about the sort of 40th anniversary of Channel 4 or something like that. So it's possible this is meant to broadly be, one arm of the sort of thing Channel 4 has done in its time. Maybe a sort of shout out to that area of comedy.
Yeah, that does make sense. Yeah, they have been, over there for years, they have really pushed the boundaries in terms of comedy and things like that. Like they do take on lots of great stuff that I don't know, wouldn't get made elsewhere. Some of which have made it into the top TV shows of the year. Yeah, but even like, recently, last year they had We Are Lady Parts.
Yeah.
The comedy about the Muslim women punk band. On paper it sounds so niche that there's, are there about 6 people in London that's aimed at, but actually it's just through great writing and great characterisation, it's just a sitcom that almost anyone can like.
Well, yeah, and to give them their credit, they could have just made a self-indulgent documentary where they patted themselves firmly on the back for making offensive comedy in the past that's now just sort of mildly naughty. But no, they've got ahead and made something that even by 2022 standards is quite okay. Went there, did you? So, fair enough, I suppose, Channel 4, fair enough.
Well, that's in contrast to the BBC, who had their 100th anniversary this year, and it was more of a sort of sombre reflection on the national broadcaster and its history. At least we got some good Doctor Who out of it.
Well, yeah, at least we got one of the better recent Doctor Who's out of it, so, it's not all bad. Channel 4 have so far resisted the urge to, I don't know, whip Mitchell and Webb back into the Peep Show set or something. They haven't made too much self-indulgent shit, but there's still time. Please do not take that idea if you're listening.
I believe they said they're not going to do it. They won't do another series until they're like 60 or something like that.
Until it becomes truly sad and inexplicable that they're still doing it together.
Yeah. Next up this episode, we will each be counting down our 5 favourite films of the year and attempting some sort of unified consensus about what is the best one. We will also be talking about our least favourite film of the year. However, before all of that, Nick, what kind of year has it been in the cinema?
Well, I'm not as avid a viewer of the film landscape as other people on this same podcast, but it has felt like a bit of another slightly bleak year for anything that isn't either a franchise movie or a auteur art piece. It seems like, at least in terms of, in the general, I don't know what you call it, the box office Hollywood profile landscape, it's basically you're either a Marvel film or you're a wanky film made by Wes Anderson or something, and the space between that continues to be just a barren desert. But that's been, an ongoing transition outwards in these two directions, which I guess in many ways reflects the polarisation of our society for quite a while, and that has continued. I think, I gather, some cinemas and movie theatres in the US have expressed their disappointment in the box office. It basically means that, the auteur films never made that much to begin with, and the blockbusters still make a fair amount. But if there isn't a big blockbuster out, it basically means there's no money, which some of them feel is a problem with the system. Yeah. So that is the impression I've absorbed.
Yeah, the decline of the mid-tier genre picture or single star vehicle, a film like go see this, it's got, I don't know, Will Smith in it or Bruce Willis, not necessarily will be one of the big films of the year, but it'll be entertaining genre vehicle or things like that. I mean, there's not been much in that regard this year that can't easily be described as an art house film or things like that. I mean, even just scanning down the list of stuff that's come out, a film like Glass Onion, which in the past would have been a kind of star vehicle genre pick. Daniel Craig plays a detective. The only way it's managed to achieve the success it's meant to achieve is because of it's got its absolutely amazing cast, and it is a great cast, but they've got 8 high profile stars in it.
It's true. Glass Onion is probably one of the closest you've got to that sort of thing, but it's not it kind of is now part of a franchise, but still it's not part of a bit of IP attached to a multi-million-dollar merchandising empire. Yeah. And it's not wanky art house stuff, it's fairly straight genre entertainment. So I guess there is that has at least ended the year on a slightly good note for that, but of course that is a Netflix film, so no money for the cinemas there.
Yeah, and again, Netflix and things like that are able to support a wider range of stuff because they've got much more money coming in, and they're able to fund more unusual projects, and they're able to put up the cash for star vehicles and thrillers and things like that, genre pictures. I think a lot of that stuff goes straight to Netflix now or Disney Plus or things like that. I mean, this year we even had Prey, that's a franchise film. It's in the Predator franchise, but that was direct to Disney Plus as well. Again, an Alien, a Predator sequel, that sort of stuff in the past year would have been a bread and butter money for cinemas. But now it's that's just going to streaming services.
It is weird, because they're having a few films like that, which I guess Prey still counts as franchise fodder, but I don't know the fact that even the films are going straight to the streaming service now. Again, it's nice that the films still get to exist, I suppose, and I don't know, maybe on some economic level that's the only ways they can, but can't be great news for the cinema going experience.
No, and then you could probably get further polarisation as well in cinemas between the multiplex and the art house, or not art house cinemas, but I guess the independent cinemas, and that there's the big chains that basically cater in almost exclusively tentpole franchise films. It's a Marvel film, it's a Bond film, it's a DC film, those are where they make their money. And then independent cinemas that are stocking obviously they're showing documentaries, foreign language films, which is what they did in the past. But to be honest, that's where you're going to find, like genre pictures and like, mid-tier star vehicles. And obviously these cinemas are much more expensive. You're paying £15-20 a ticket just to see something like See How They Run, a murder mystery comedy series with not like megastars, like Will Smith, Tom Cruise, but people like Sam Rockwell, Saoirse Ronan, Ruth Wilson, respected performers in a funny and sort of dramatic film. But like that's now for some reason like you go to independent cinema to see that. Like, did they show that at the Odeon?
I don't know. Well, for the record, since I'm not going to mention it in my top 5, I did see that, and that was a good time.
Yeah, that was a good film.
I watched it over Christmas on Disney+.
Yeah. So that's another recommendation there, free of charge.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the actual content of the films, it is kind of interesting, but although I don't think anyone could say that the superhero rush is over, we seem to be really entering the sort of resentful stage of our relationship with them. Like, it really feels like people want there to be something else, but no one seems able to provide it, so we're just sort of carrying on. I mean, again, mild spoilers, there are no, I haven't got it in front of me right now, superhero films in my top 5. There's one in the honourable mentions. But yeah, it's not been a banner year for superhero films, and although I still enjoyed them well enough when I watched them, mostly, the better ones, I can't say it's a side of the film business I'm aching with excitement for right now.
No, it doesn't seem like it's a particularly fertile area, or there's like something on the horizon that's like really exciting and things like that. Probably the best like superhero film this year was The Batman, which I was surprised by the fact that it was nearly 3 hours long, and yet another dark and gritty Batman movie, and that worked. But we'll get into the details of this, but there were definitely a lot of disappointments I felt from the superhero franchises. Yeah, and a sense of people like wanting something different, right? Almost people feeling like slightly resentful that they're obliged to go and see another installment in something they've seen lots of versions of before, because that's all there is.
Well, yeah, I mean, The Rock's Black Adam film, which he's been making for I think over a decade at this point. Genuinely, I remember when he was cast as Black Adam. It was the early 2010s, and it came out, and it almost felt like no one really cared. Like, that was an amazing fart of a release. Obviously, I hover around in various sort of comic-infused circles. I know people who saw that film. Some of them say, yeah, it was fun, I suppose, and other was just like, yeah, who cares? It just didn't seem to elicit much enthusiasm.
Yeah, and it wasn't through lack of like marketing, like there was like posters for it everywhere and like trailers out and things like that. So they were really trying to make it one of the big films of the year, and people just weren't into it. I don't know if it's partly the effect of COVID means people are going to the cinema less unless they're really excited, and people are like, I'll come round on streaming, I'll catch it later, if that's what people's attitude was.
And that's a film with The Rock in it.
Yeah, exactly.
I gather is one of the rare recent-ish movie stars people actually like.
Yeah, I mean, he was like the highest grossing actor in the world at one point. Yeah, and he was good. I mean, I like films with The Rock in, but
neither of us have seen Black Adam.
No, because I just felt like I don't know, just didn't feel that exciting about it. I didn't, it just didn't capture my imagination. Kind of felt that was kind of summed up a lot of this year. I mean, there were some other like necessarily like non-superhero disappointments, like there was Jurassic World Dominion, like linking together the two Jurassic Park franchises, which was, again, it was alright. It's probably the weakest of the 3 recent Jurassic Park films, and it's no match to the original. And there was just a sense of like, even bringing back all these Jurassic Park characters, it's trying to be a franchise, a shared universe, and people are just like, I'm not into it.
I mean, it's always a point of pride at this point, but I've never seen a Jurassic Park film apart from the original. It's not because I'm a purist, it's just I just don't see why they need to exist. People didn't like Jurassic Park because of their orgasmic relationship with dinosaurs. They liked Jurassic Park because it was actually good. It's the same logic that's brought us endless Watchmen sequels no one cares about. It's like the people don't like these things because they want more of the characters.
Yeah, the original Jurassic Park is fucking brilliant. Like, for a long time when I was a teenager, it was like my favourite film of all time, and I still really like it, which is probably why I go to see every slightly rubbish sequel that they make. But
I hear rumours that at least one of the 3 recent ones, the Jurassic World ones, was at least watchably alright, but I wouldn't know.
I liked the second one when they're on the islands erupting and they're all trying to outrun the volcano. That's quite good. But it's no patch on the original. It was alright, Jurassic World. It wasn't, I didn't feel like robbed of my money like really, really bad films like Warcraft or something like that, which is just like shockingly awful. Like,
a film we saw in the first year of the podcast and continues to haunt us like some kind of angry ghost.
It's definitely the high watermark in terms of bad films, or one of them. I think partly because when we started doing the podcast, when we were doing 3-4 things an episode, we saw a lot more, and I suppose we have like swerved. We just don't see things. If someone says it's absolutely terrible, we don't see it.
It looks like it's why we don't see it. I mean, yeah, again, spoilers again for my upcoming worst film pick. It was actually a bit of a challenge finding one, because I don't see that many films outside of this podcast because I'm subhuman scum, and we didn't bother going and seeing many bad films. Alistair sees a lot more films than me. He may well have had more bad films to choose from. I will be saying something that's actually quite mediocre is my worst film of the year. But anyway, we'll get to that.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, we just really don't have the time to see stuff that's just truly terrible. Yeah.
Increasingly, we'd very much like to see a post-superhero world in some ways. If I think it might make, I mean, the big two superhero creators, Marvel seems to be running on a bit of a treadmill, and DC are, as far as I can see, in a bin, hammering on the sides as they sob and cry. I mean, James Gunn's just taken over that. James Gunn's co-running that with, I think, it's Peter Safran. I like James Gunn as a creator. I am vaguely interested to see what his direction is, and maybe it'll finally infuse me. But yeah, that still has to actually happen.
Yeah, well, they're in the process of rebooting that. Yeah, and we had our Oscars films as well, and then again, not a stellar year.
I don't know what the nominations are actually going to be, but I haven't seen that much exciting Oscar baits. I'd quite like to see the Banshees of Inisherin.
Yeah, not seen that, but that was very good, and that was Little White Lies' third favourite film of the year, so that's a good.
It's now on Disney Plus, so I can see it for no money, which, as we all know, is the biggest draw for me.
Yeah, and there's buzz around this new Tom Hanks film based on it's a remake of a Norwegian film, I believe, possibly Swedish.
Is it The Whale? People seem to like that.
Yeah, there's The Whale. Brendan Fraser's back. It's Darren Aronofsky, although I think we were both a bit lukewarm on Mother.
The Mother was at least ambitious.
Yeah, but this year's Oscars films, I mean, there wasn't, Coda, was very good, but a few were a bit disappointing. Belfast, very run-of-the-mill coming-of-age story. Don't Look Up, powerfully unsubtle. West Side Story is so similar to the original that I was like, what is the point in just doing basically the same film again? So yeah, I don't know. Not too good in the Oscar season. Drive My Car was great. Recommend that to anyone.
Yeah, so I don't know. I mean, based on this exciting summary chat, it doesn't feel like we're brimming with enthusiasm for current cinema, or at least the mainstream section of it.
No, I mean, we've got some exciting stuff to look forward to next year, like June Part 2. Obviously, I'm excited for that. Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. So yeah, excited for that. Christopher Nolan's film about Robert Oppenheimer. That sounds like a good one.
Yeah, but it does seem like the interesting stuff's probably happening a bit off to the side at the moment. It feels like mainstream cinema might be flailing a bit, or at least running down a road which it's coming to the end of. But then again, it's the sort of thing people have been saying for a long time. We may well be back here next year saying roughly the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, it took the studio system quite a few years to die, even after the energy had run out of it. What crucially killed it was technology changing, so TV, meaning people didn't have to go to cinema as much, which we might be seeing now with streaming services as well, and also the rise of fresh talent bringing a fresh perspective. The American New Wave, that's where directors from Spielberg, Scorsese, Francis Ford Coppola coming in, shaking things up with exciting new films. I mean, similar to the time though, Hollywood didn't really respond to the kind of cultural change of the 1960s, and it took until the 70s for people to kick down the door with the exciting new films aimed at young people to change things. And there is a sense, I do feel, that cinema does feel very disconnected from the big issues in society and the big contemporary debates. So maybe we want some young, angry, independent filmmakers to come in with politically relevant, exciting films.
So, yeah, we are still sort of making superhero films on the basis of a template that was refined in the late 2000s, early 2010s.
Yeah.
And I don't know, it feels like a lot of the Oscar bait has been moving in similar circles for a while. So yeah, maybe you're right. Maybe we just need genuine newness.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. We've also got Kraven the Hunter next year, so let's see.
Oh my god, you mentioned that. I was worried we'd forget.
Yeah, well, I've read the comic now, so we have to see it.
I very much doubt it's going to be a direct adaptation of Kraven's Last Hunt. I'll be interested to see how they shout out to Kraven's Last Hunt, whether he does, spoilers, blow his own head off at the end.
Wait and see. Right, but yeah, with that sort of slightly grim summary out of the way, do we want to move on to the worst film of the year? I'm going to lead us off, and similar to what we were saying, the film that I've chosen is one that I thought was fine. To be honest, it's the one that's probably the most okay film of the year, and it wasn't shockingly awful, but it also wasn't particularly interesting. So my least favourite film of 2022 is Avatar, The Way of Water. Which I did go to see and haven't discussed it in the podcast. It's not terrible. It's entertaining. It's about 3 hours long, which if anything is too long. It's visually stunning. It's beautiful to look at. It's James Cameron does excellent technical directing, but it's just empty spectacle. The plot is kind of two-dimensional. The characters are uninteresting at every single opportunity throughout the film. When it could do something slightly more interesting than a very basic action-adventure story, it declines to do that and does the most straightforward story it can think of. It's got like high school kind of level conflict, and it's not even as visually stunning as the previous one, or more accurately, it is as beautiful, but it's not the huge leap forward that the last one was that really captured people's imagination. It kind of looks the same. The water looks great, but I don't think most people appreciate how hard it is to animate water. So it's just it's a fine, glittery thing to look at for 3 hours, but doesn't really do anything more interesting.
I have not seen this because I assumed it would be like that.
Yeah. But like I say, it wasn't terrible. Like, I didn't find it offensively bad. I would even go as far to say that my worst film of 2021, which was that really, really dire adaptation of Tom Clancy's Without Remorse, done by Amazon, that was worse. And if anything, I'd probably rather rewatch Avatar: Way of Water than the Justice League films, probably either of them. There, at least it's got something, the cool, glowy blue stuff.
At least it's got colour in it.
Yeah, it's got colour. It's got a varied palette, even if it is quite blue. But yeah, it's not shockingly awful, but it was, I feel, the least interesting, most pedestrian movie of the year aside from its visuals. So there you go, James Cameron. Worst film of the year, Avatar: The Way of Water.
Yeah, you've just earned $1 billion at the box office for this film, so take that. Right, for me, well, the worst film I saw this year is sadly not eligible for this prestigious non-prize. That would be Don't Look Up, a film that I thought was smug, overlong and unfunny. I disliked it immensely. It was by far my least favourite film of the year. Sadly, released in 2021, not eligible. So, much like Alistair, I'm instead giving it to a film which, to be honest, was merely just mediocre. It was probably low end all right, to be honest. If this were a star system, it would get 2, maybe 2.5 stars. This isn't a complete kicking, but it was just the dullest film I saw this year. And that film is Black Crab, a film about soldiers fighting on ice in some sort of post-apocalyptic landscape. And it's not even a massive black crab. There's a couple of good emotional bits eventually. At the end, I think, which is also true of Don't Look Up, by the way. The few bits that affected me in any way came at the very, very end when my mind had almost turned off completely. But yeah, a Black Crab at least is not as punishingly overlong. I cannot stress how much I wish I was talking about Don't Look Up. But yeah, I'm not, sadly, based on the technicalities of our self-inflicted rules, we're instead doing Black Crab. Sorry, Black Crab, I do feel black bad about this.
Yeah, we watched it in the podcast, and I felt that, what is quite a good concept was let down by not having much more than a good concept. I mean, the kind of setting of the sort of military dystopia was quite good, but then it's kind of just a lot of the same. They skate over some ice, they get shot at a bit.
Yeah,
it's maybe it'd be better if it was like 45 minutes, like TV length thing, rather than an hour or hour and a half. Sorry, whatever it was, maybe even 2 hours.
Yeah, no, as I say, I come not to bury Black Crab, but almost by default, that is probably the least good film I saw this year, in my opinion. And there we go. Right, got any quick honourable mentions you want to slide in before we begin counting?
Yes, I do have one quick honourable mention to mention, as which I shall do quickly. One film that I just do need to shout out this year is Crimes of the Future. It's not in the top 5 because it is dark and upsetting. It's a film that, I really did not enjoy, but it's not designed to be enjoyed. It's designed to find a particularly dark and unpleasant part of your brain and squeeze it till it hurts. This is the film set in the future where the primary form of entertainment is sexy live surgery. And it's way worse than you can imagine to actually watch that. But yeah, David Cronenberg, he's the master of the unpleasant. I didn't enjoy this film, that's why it's not in the top 5. But it is...
but still not the worst.
It's something to behold. So yeah, anyway, honourable mention to Crimes of the Future.
Okay, I have a few honourable mentions that I'm going to fire through them fairly quickly. These are good films, but did not quite make the top 5. The first is the superhero film I mentioned, that is Black Panther: Wakanda Forever, slightly pipping The Batman at the post for best superhero film this year, just because I thought The Batman was far too long. My pet peeve with modern cinema. It was too long. And yeah, also Prey, not quite making it, good film though, and similarly Nope. A fun time. I liked those 3 films, but they were slightly squeezed out by better films. I watched 4 2022 films over Christmas and had to rewrite this list as a result, and Nope was the main casualty of that.
Interesting. Well, yeah, I certainly agree that I liked Prey and Black Panther: Wakanda Forever. The death of Chadwick Boseman was tragic, and they managed to make the film work, changing out the star, so and making his character's death in universe work as well. So those were two good films. So yeah, but they are not in the top 5. Right, rolling on to the countdown, the moment you've all been waiting for. I'll go first. My number 5th favourite film of the year. It was one we didn't review on the podcast, but we may have discussed it briefly, and that is Coda. Surprise Best Picture Oscar winner, the story of a hearing girl in a deaf family, Coda standing for Child of Deaf Parents, who wants to become a singer and go to a specialist performing arts college where she can study singing. And it's just a really sweet, nice story starring Emilia Jones from Lock and Key, the main character. It's also got a nice plot line about the deaf family trying to organise a union in their small fishing community, and she's obviously needed to interpret them. And yeah, it's sweet, it's funny, it's really nice film. It's warm. It was great, and I'm really glad it was a real surprise that it won Best Picture. But yeah, it deserved it.
Yeah, I haven't seen this, although I do kind of want to, if only because it's got Marlee Matlin in it, who is one of those actors I have a lifetime of vague affection towards because she was good in The West Wing.
Yep, she's absolutely brilliant in this, playing the main character's mother. So yeah.
Yep.
So yeah, no, that was a good film. So that's number 5. Nick?
Right, my number 5 is a recent release, one of the films I saw over Christmas. This is, of course, Glass Onion, a Knives Out mystery. This is, of course, relatively topical, a film we haven't actually got around to talking about on the podcast, actually. The new film in the Knives Out series from director Rian Johnson, starring Daniel Craig as the Foghorn Leghorn sounding detective Benoit Blanc, this time investigating a murder on a luxury island owned by a billionaire who's built a massive Glass Onion style complex on it. Yeah, once again, it's a Agatha Christie-esque murder mystery story about how rich people are arseholes, and yeah, it's good fun. It's very nice, sort of relaxing Christmas viewing. It's got a big cast of good actors, including Catherine Hahn, Kate Hudson, Ed Norton, Janelle Monáe, but many others I've forgotten the names of, all of whom are very good, all of whom clearly seem to be enjoying themselves. We also rewatched Knives Out over Christmas, so that's a really, really good film. I think Knives Out grabs you emotionally, possibly in a way that Glass Onion slightly doesn't. And also there's a couple of bits in Glass Onion which I'm not going to spoil, which I've bumped on very slightly. But nonetheless, it is a very good, very entertaining film, and it's, especially if you like Knives Out, it's definitely worth seeing. So here it is at number 5.
I thought this was great. Narrowly missed out being in the top 5. Yeah, I really hope they keep making more and more Benoit Blanc films. Daniel Craig is great, and he seems to really enjoy being Benoit Blanc, whereas he seemed to not really enjoy being James Bond.
It's true, it's possible just to be happy for him, but he's finally enjoying playing a part.
Yeah, but no, it's a great film. It's funny, it's got good twists. It's one of those ones that does drama and comedy without the drama kind of being deflated by the comedy, or the comedy seeming out of place next to the drama. The cast is brilliant. I mean, it's going to be hard for them to keep making these films with casts of these caliber, a huge cast each time, but I thought this was excellent, and the buzz was so much that I actually went and saw it in its brief cinema run of only 1 week. So I did actually drag myself to the theatre to see it, and it was good.
Nice. It did have some good visuals. It wouldn't have been bad to see it at the cinema, but I, of course, could not resist the opportunity to wait a month and not pay.
Yeah, but I did rewatch it over Christmas as well, so yeah, it was a good Christmas film. Right, number 4. It was mentioned briefly. It's Nope.
Yeah, no. As I say, this was basically the last film cut from the list so that I could put Glass Onion on it. But yeah, Nope was extremely enjoyable.
Yeah, no, I thought it was great. Again, it's just the Jordan Peele mix of humour and horror, in that, yeah, he can be really, really scary, but also really, really funny. It is a really tense, scary film. Great characterisation. Daniel Kaluuya especially. The whole flashback bits involving the monkey attack, which, if you haven't seen the film, I won't spoil, are quite disturbed and quite tense. And it's got a really interesting story about the history of Hollywood and sort of showbiz and entertainment, and it's really kind of diving into lots of American archetypes like cowboys and, the kind of place of African Americans in American culture and American history, and how they relate to these icons like cowboys and film icons and things like that. So for a film that is on its surface a kind of horror film, I say kind of horror film because it's also got a lot of comedy in it, and like a lot of Jordan Peele's film, they're kind of quite scary in the middle but then not scary at the end, and I think that's deliberate. But it does really dive into these deep explorations of American archetypes and American culture, as well as being quite scary.
Yeah, no, I like this. It had an interesting sort of mysterious vagueness to it, and I was never quite sure where it was going to go. It doesn't adhere to like archetypes or stereotypes or obvious genre plots in the same way that some things do. Yeah, it sort of zigs and zags, and as Alistair just sort of said, that can sometimes lead to a feeling that it's weirdly plotted or that the tension is fizzling out in some way, but it does make them very interesting to watch.
Yeah. So that was my number 4.
Yeah, my number 4 is a film that I kind of feel has not got as much love as it deserves in some of these year-end lists. God damn it, I'm here to correct the establishment. And that film is Turning Red, a movie that was on Disney Plus in the middle of the year. It's the Pixar movie about a girl who is randomly turning into a giant red panda, as a very obvious metaphor for puberty. I really like this. I thought it was really sweet. I thought it was really cathartic and resonant. I found the emotion of it quite involving, and I really liked the lead character. Even though I know people who I spoke to over Christmas who found her quite caustic and annoying, but I really liked the lead character. I found her quite endearing. It may say more about me than the film, I don't know. But no, I really like this. I feel it should get more due, so here it is at number 4 on my list.
Yeah, I like this as well. I think it could be the best thing Pixar have done since Inside Out. It was great. It had a strong cast, it was funny, it was quite touching, moving, that kind of Pixar sort of family drama they do really, really well. Yeah, it was great. Didn't quite make my top 5, but it is in my top 10 of the year, and I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Yeah, no, good movie. If you haven't seen it, then please do. I feel it slightly slipped under radar, so now's the time.
I get the feeling it's been disadvantaged by coming out in the early part of the year.
Yeah.
As always, critics strangely short attention spans.
Dumb bastards.
Myself included.
Anyway.
Number 3, third favourite film of the year. This was possibly the surprise hit of the year, at least a surprise hit for me. It was The Worst Person in the World, the millennial angst and dating drama about a young woman living in Oslo, young Norwegian woman. She's trained to be a doctor, she's trying to find what she wants in life, trying to find the right romantic partner, trying to find her place in the world, and it was so funny, it's sweet. The main character was just really kind of accessible, relatable, sort of every woman, but not in a sort of generic way, in a way that she felt like a specific person, but you could really relate to her struggles, and really captured that kind of millennial quarter life malaise, that sense of like, what are you doing? Where's your life going? How are you going to fit into this world? Yeah, and it's just charming and sweet, and I'd recommend it to almost anyone.
Yeah, no, I would actually quite like to see this, and maybe one day I will, because I have heard a lot of people on various podcasts, including now ours, say nice things about it, but I haven't yet.
So yeah, I can recommend my number 3, The Worst Person in the World. Nick, what's your third favourite film of the year?
My third is another of the ones I saw over Christmas as I sat on my sofa being either full of snot or full of food, and this one is The Wonder, the movie that is on Netflix, starring Florence Pugh as a nurse who goes to a remote Irish community to watch over a girl who claims to not need to eat and see if she's full of shit or not. I mean, obviously she would probably be more full of shit if she was eating, but anyway, that joke isn't in the film for some reason. Anyway, I saw this. It was very good. It was very quiet and thoughtful and dramatic. It did not contain any of those kind of jokes, and I really enjoyed it. It was very tense. It was a good length. It had a few sort of weird, surreal, almost folk horror moments, which it sort of let drift around it rather than following through on them too hard, but it still made it sort of a bit more of a weird, strange experience, but I appreciated. Yeah, good film, enjoyed it.
Yeah, I absolutely love this film. I think this was the best thing I saw at the London Film Festival this year. I got to go to the premiere, which was nice. It has also narrowly missed out on being in the top 5. It was really, really tough, this one or Coda, and I went back and forth a lot. Really sorry, The Wonder. Really sorry, Florence Pugh. It's a great film. I thought she did a great performance. Wouldn't be surprised if she gets an Oscar nomination. Everything from like the music to the setting, just really creepy and so darkly disturbing. So I thought this actually excellent, and recommend it to anyone.
Florence Pugh also great in this. That's the other thing I should probably mention. Yeah, fantastic performance.
And she's done a lot of good stuff this year, and next year she's in June, Oppenheimer and the new Zach Braff film. So I'm sure we'll be discussing her again in the future. That was number 3. I'm now moving on to my second favourite film of the year. One that has not been on many people's top lists of the year, and I think it kind of flew under the radar at the time, but I absolutely loved it.
It's Chippendale Rescue Pages, isn't it?
Undeserved classic. No, so unrecognised classic even. No, it was After Yang, which I absolutely loved. Quietly sublime science fiction film set in the near future about a family that has a robot older brother for their daughter, who sadly breaks down and dies, and then charts the family's very moving grieving process, and it's got a lot to do with memories and relations and how well do you really know the people in your family, sort of stuff, but all done in a sort of kind of quiet, moving way.
Yeah, I saw this with Alistair at the film festival, and although it didn't quite make my top 5, possibly because I think, as I may have remembered to say in our review, I felt although it was very good and very moving, it perhaps felt weirdly low impact in some way. But yeah, it's a very good film. It's a very nice, thoughtful film, and if you enjoy that kind of science fiction, it's one of the best examples of it I've seen in a while.
Yeah. So that was my second favourite film of the year.
My second favourite film of the year is Paul Thomas Anderson's Licorice Pizza, which we saw early in the year. This is, of course, the film about the romance between a teenage boy and a slightly older woman, played by Alana Haim, I think. It's a really evolving, sweet film. I just was surprised how attached I became to their sort of ongoing sort of romance, will they, won't they tension. Not always my sort of film, but this one really worked for me for some reason. The characters and the acting really pulled me in. Alana Haim's great in this. All the actors, to be honest, are great in this. There's some very funny bits as well. Very good soundtrack. I was honestly, as I say, slightly surprised how high it ended up being on the list, but I just kept putting it above things until it almost got to the top. Yeah,
also narrowly missed out on being in the top 5. I like this film a lot. Paul Thomas Anderson does great movies. Yeah, this one was a really good, exploration of life in the 1970s. Great soundtrack, weaved in subtly like all the sort of various events from kind of Hollywood things, the fuel price rises and oil shortages, and the legalization of pinball. It's interesting, and the rise of the waterbed. So it really captured that period in America really well, full of nods of everything to David Bowie to Taxi Driver. Yeah, absolutely great film. A real standout. Again, I think it's probably one of the reasons why it's not on so many people's top lists of the year is that it came out really, really early in the year. It was like early January or something.
Yeah.
So I thought this was great. Yeah, really nice, sweet film.
Yeah, and now it's time for Alistair's number 1, which, based on things that haven't been said so far, I suspect may also be my number 1, but we'll see, we'll let him say.
Yeah, I'm thinking about it. So it's either going to be Chippendale Rescue Rangers, or that was a good film.
That was a good film. I'm a big bead using it as the whip. No. It was not that bad. In fact, it was even quite good.
Yeah, but it was certainly better than Avatar. Anyway. My favourite film of the year, absolutely blew me away. Phenomenal movie, great in every way. It was Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Ditto, check, same, yes.
Yeah, we're exactly on the same page with this. First time that Michelle Yeoh got a lead performance in a film about the sort of dimension hopping laundrette owner who's struggling with her teenage daughter's sexuality, caring for her elderly relative, and her general life angst, life malaise, and also whilst hopping into other dimensions, dealing with all sorts of crazy interdimensional conflict stuff. It was both funny, it was silly, it was moving, it was everything. Yeah, no, this was, as I think I said at the time, one of these ludicrous mainstream movie experiences that also somehow becomes this transcendent masterpiece about the entire state of existence. It's extremely enjoyable, extremely good, extremely well made. The acting's all great. The ridiculousness of the concepts and the ambitiousness of it is amazing. The fact that it came out quite close to Doctor Strange 2 and managed to completely annihilate it in terms of, having anything whatsoever to say with the multiverse. If anything, probably only made it seem better. Yeah, no, this was really good. I'm aware we're not blazing any trails by having this as our number 1 film of the year, but hey, who cares? No, but it was brilliant. Yeah, and I like the fact that it used this sort of unusual, quite high concept sci-fi dimension hopping thing going on, but really wove it into the story about a family and their trials and their dramas, and specifically the main character, and exploring the different ways that your life could go, and through these ultimate dimensions and things like that. And it's it's just really powerful. And it was just great fun. It's one of those movies you go to the cinema and just totally blown away by. Yeah, no, lovely time. Enjoy it. Right, so time to come up with the unified MFV top 3 of the year. Well, number 1's going to be pretty easy. Everything Everywhere All at Once. I mean, The Wonder I really, really liked. So yeah, it probably should be on there, I think. Yeah, I mean, what was your number 2 after Yang? After Yang, yeah. What was your number 3? Worst Person in the World. I also put Nope on the list, which you liked. I haven't seen. No, I'm gonna. The Wonder and After Yang in some order. The Wonder number 2 and then after. I don't know. Yeah, Wonder 2. Wonder was your number 3. Should we do? We could do Everything Everywhere All at Once, After Yang, The Wonder. Yeah, sure. Sounds good. Yeah, no, I liked After Yang. I'll take that. Okay, there you go. Those are. I mean, it's a competitive year, Yeah. I mean, we haven't listed that many massive blockbusters, but perhaps not given enough credit in our summary earlier. The films outside the blockbuster sphere have actually been quite good, even if they maybe haven't made as much money as they deserve. No, but we have found out some great films, and I think that's a really strong top 3. And those films are now available through streaming platforms, so hopefully you can enjoy them, and then their creators will get more work.
Good luck to them. Okay, so on to the other side of the coin. It's time for television. And this year in TV, on the one hand, it's been an incredibly good year. I have already posted my top 10 TV on the website, thus spoiling this segment. But yeah, it's been an incredibly high quality year. It's been a lot of really good shows, and interestingly, not that many of which have been part of the IP explosion. Or certainly, the shows outside that have been very good, and they do seem to have found audiences and interest. So it's been an exciting year in terms of content. It also weirdly feels a bit like the streaming explosion of recent years might be finally starting to hit its inevitable expansion and then collapse point. Various companies involved seem to be starting to talk about how shitting out gargantuan amounts of content for their specific group of subscribers might not be the way to win. Like, I've seen Warner Brothers say that. It seems like Disney Plus are pulling back a bit on the extreme content shitting. And
extreme content shitting.
Yeah.
Technical term.
And I think Netflix seem to have hit kind of a plateau as well. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see where this goes, because yeah, on the one hand, you keep hearing rumours of corporate wobbles with increasing speed, but on the other hand, the actual shows often very good. So yeah, that's kind of where I feel we are. Alistair?
Yeah, I think we're at the point when we are at maybe peak streaming service, partly because like most of my favourite stuff from this year, especially in my like top 10 and my top 5, is scattered across like a lot of different streaming platforms. It's not like one of them is dominating. And I don't think it can really carry on like this with like, you know, I've got something like 6 different subscriptions and I feel I need to cut this down. You know, I'm subscribed to, you know, like Netflix, Now, Disney Plus, Apple TV, and as well as trying to keep on top of like what's on like iPlayer, 4OD, and things like that. Mubi briefly for Kingdom. You know, it's all... Oh yeah, Amazon, I knew that's what I was forgetting. Like, you know, there's so much stuff going on, but I feel that people aren't so keen to keep up with all these different subscriptions. And also we had like some notable flops of this year, like CNN Plus, that was launched and kind of folded within like a week or so, or something like that. You know, as I think some people thought that might be a streaming service too far.
I mean, certainly Paramount Plus has launched this year and has certainly been, I think, a streaming service too far for me, even though people continue to say nice things about Star Trek Strange New Worlds. It's like, yeah, I suppose I'll get to it eventually.
Yeah.
One day, and I feel I've really exhausted all the others.
I mean, it's interesting that I don't know really anyone who's got a Paramount Plus, and they've pushed it heavily with content. They've got everything from Top Gun Maverick to Halo show to new South Park films, and yeah, it's still not getting a huge impact.
It seems such a random bag of random stuff. I mean, it just doesn't seem that there's anything coherent there apart from we've got all the Star Trek. I mean, or is it most of it still on Netflix as well? Anyway, but yeah, I mean Apple TV, to give it its credit, has emerged strongly this year and last, to actually have a reasonable brand for, you know, a small group of relatively good shows. I don't know to what extent they'd be rewarded financially or whether they too are starting to reconsider their volume strategy, but, you know, yeah, again, the quality of the shows is often not the problem. You know, when you've got that amount of money, you can hire good writers and thus create quality through the simple process of throwing money at it. But
yeah, there's no shortage of talent. I mean, even like Apple Plus this year has put a lot of stuff up there, and you know, some stuff hasn't been that good. Like, I don't know, I watched the first couple of episodes of that sitcom Loot, and it was just alright, and I was like, okay, well, Apple money has just created another okay sitcom. You know, there are plenty, the world universe full of okay sitcoms. So there's a lot of content coming out there, but through the sheer volume of content, all the different things they're trying, they have hit on some gems. Slow Horses, for example, you know, busy into the second series right now. You know, it's great. Gary Oldman's great. The rest of the cast's great. You know, so...
And in terms of comedy on Apple TV, Mythic Quest's pretty good. I've not seen the third season yet, because there's so much TV, but the first two are very good.
Yeah, so I mean, these platforms are consistently producing good stuff, and it was really hard to draw up this top 5, especially again the 5th position. There were like 3 shows at least, possibly 4 shows gunning for that 5th spot just off the list. So really, really difficult.
Yeah, again, as you may know if you read my top 10, and as you will discover shortly if not, the number of honourable mentions this year is off the chain. It was a lot. There's a lot of very good TV this year, and also not that much of it connected to the big obvious IPs. Like, it's been in some ways interesting to watch cinema kind of collapse into a puddle of the money just flowing inwards towards the IP, and TV sort of somehow continue being reasonably broad and not necessarily floating towards that. I mean, I guess ultimately, it's the bigger investment required in terms of at least certainly going to the cinema, I guess, seems to discourage people, which I'm assuming in our cost of living crisis times, is not a factor that's going to go down.
No, exactly. And films are just expensive to make and to market. I think they seem to rely a bit more on word of mouth to market these streaming shows, and also the fact that, the in-platform advertising. It's really important to get that real estate that's like the top of the Netflix when you open it up, or the top of Disney Plus when you open it up. But in terms of IP this year, I mean, there's been good shows like, She-Hulk, Italian, Law, from the MCU, things like that.
Yeah, it wasn't in my top 10, but both She-Hulk and Ms. Marvel were pretty enjoyable.
Yeah. Peacemaker from Disney, I suppose, yeah.
DC, but yeah.
DC, sorry, that was me getting my D's mixed up.
The show that, I may have got James Gunn the top job, who knows.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, it was a good time.
Yeah, so there are good stuff coming in. Star Wars, not great this year, I suppose. Well, we'll come to more detail, but Book of Boba Fett, slightly disappointed, and Obi-Wan Kenobi was fine overall.
I mean, yeah, maybe it's just easier to experiment a bit on TV and get it out quickly to a wider audience so people can discover these things, and these sort of weird random things can go viral. I mean, things like, to mention one that didn't quite make the old top 10, Yellow Jackets came out of nowhere as a premise and as an IP. I mean, I guess there are things it's similar to, like Lost and Lord of the Flies, but yeah, that was an entirely new thing which did, I suppose, have a few high-profile actors in it. But still, it managed to capture people's interest because it's just the sort of thing people like. And I guess, again, the sort of high-concept mystery, made a small comeback this year with both Yellow Jackets and Severance. It's apparently been long enough that the wounds have somewhat healed from Lost that we can try to enjoy that sort of thing again.
Yeah, Lost, Dark Angel, all those, even X-Files, I suppose, things have been the ultimate one, things like that. There was consistently good stuff across all the platforms, The Dropout, was another great little show. Disney Plus, I think it's on Hulu in America, Disney Plus here. There's lots of great stuff floating around. It was really, really hard. I think in my efforts to draw up this top 5 list of the year, I think I ended up writing a top 20 in order to really work out what the orders of things were and what I preferred to what, just to make sure. Yeah, and that's not everything I saw this year. That's just the 20 shows I thought deserved to be on the list. Yeah,
it does lead to a certain weird sense of siloing, I guess, the sheer volume of stuff. I talk to other people I know who have maybe similar taste or who get their recommendations from similar sources, and we can chat about similar shows. But occasionally, I encounter someone who doesn't involve themselves in the same culture as me at all, and they tell me about the shows they're watching, and I just sit there going, "What? What's that?" And that's on Waggle TV, is it? Okay. It's very strange. If anything, we're talking apparently about the same increasingly small number of films, whereas television has just become this explosive landscape that no single human can ever keep track of.
Yeah, peak TV. Professional TV critics, I don't know how they do it. There aren't enough hours in the day to watch everything you need to watch.
Yeah, I don't know quite at what point something tips over into the I'll actually watch that list. Except, of course, for Alistair making me for the podcast.
Yeah. But and also we talked about streaming services. There's still good stuff coming through, BBC, Channel 4, the kind of, and I guess coming over from the main American national broadcasters, still putting out shows that we're watching. Like over Christmas, just look at the Christmas stuff I watched: Ghosts, Detectorist,
Prince Andrew the Musical,
which we discussed earlier. Yeah, so it's not like, there's a revolving door of talent, I think, moving between different platforms. I suppose obviously the BBC and Channel 4 are just another streaming services to me. I don't watch broadcast TV. I just watch stuff on BBC iPlayer and 4OD, but there's still good stuff there.
Yeah, it's interesting because a lot of the stuff I've liked this year has actually been on, I think, broadcast networks, either in the US or UK. But the amount of stuff I've in my top 10 even, which is like a pure streaming service show, in the whole top 10 there's about 3 of them, I think. So yeah, it's interesting. I think, I don't know whether that means that maybe broadcast networks have more rigorous quality standards because they're not crapping out content to quite as high an extent. I don't know what this means. I'll be interested to see if it's a trend that continues.
There might be something in that, or more the fact that streaming services are commissioning stuff left, right and centre. That's why you get sometimes something amazing gets through and you're like, why did they make that? It was just because they commission almost anything, but and then the few genius things get through. But it also means there's a lower bar for there's a lot of
there's a lot of shows where you watch it and think, well, that was certainly a one sentence pitch extended to the length of a series, probably made quite quickly on what may not be that high a budget. So, okay.
Well, yeah, that's the such is the way of it. But yeah, a good year overall, strong. So from all that praise to the pits.
Yep, into the bin we go. Again, I'm going to sort of mention 2 things because, to be honest, the worst thing I watched this year, the actually lowest quality thing that I thought failed to work the most was probably Murderville on Netflix. It's kind of an interesting concept. To be honest, talking about the interesting concepts is probably the most fun you could have with this show, because the actual thing they made was weird, awkward, and just felt like empty, vacant, dull space. If we're talking about streaming shows that felt like they could have used about 4 times as much time in the oven, so they were actually, finished and had some substance to them, this would be one of them.
Yeah, ditto. This is my least favourite TV show of the year. It was, the slightly improvised comedy stroke detective show in which there was a scripted murder mystery with Will Arnett playing a hard-boiled cop, and each year he gets a celebrity partner who has not seen the script and has to improv their way through the whole thing. And the end result is just something that's actually weirdly sort of wooden, because they've just got these narrow rails they have to push things down, accompanied by just some moments of awkwardness. And also it didn't find a grizzled cop cliche it wasn't willing to embrace. Will Arnett, he's good, but I just felt that the whole thing needed some work. But I think they should have either done a spoof cop show, bringing in celebrities playing themselves, but giving them scripts and rehearse them and stuff, or just done the whole thing should just be improv.
Yeah, they landed on some sort of weird middle ground that felt like neither one nor the other, and therefore neither good nor good. But for the record, although this was definitely the thing I watched this year that failed to work the most, the thing I watched this year that annoyed me the most was definitely The Rings of Power. I'm sorry, I know it's not as bad as Murderville, but considering that the vast amount of money they famously had, and as I mentioned, the fact that, let's face it, quality can be bought, or at least a certain level of quality can be bought, I don't really understand why this was so tedious. It's interesting because I know some people actually liked it, but apart from a few scattered scenes, I didn't particularly.
I agree for the 6 or so amazing shows they could have made for that amount of money.
Well, exactly.
Yeah, I don't know. A little bit of a talking head, although, to be honest, the over-focus on talking lore and the lack of focus on telling a good story is the sort of mistake I saw over and over in my university writers group when people bring in their epic fantasy novels. And it's okay if you're 18 and you've written your first novel and you're more in love with the lore of the world than plot and character. That, we've all been there. I don't really understand what the justification for that is when you've got Bezos money.
Yeah, it felt like, to be honest, a similar mistake that's being made in those Fantastic Beasts films. It's just and here's how the world came to be and how all that happened. It's okay, and where's the reason I should care? Yeah. So there we go. Probably enough complaining for the moment.
Right, as we said, it has been a good year.
It has been a good year. A few honourable mentions before we get into the top 5. I say a few, I could go for about 20 minutes, but yeah. Peacemaker and Yellow Jackets, both things we mentioned a few minutes ago, not quite in the top 5, both very good. Ghosts remains excellent, and as does my beloved Westworld, although that also got cancelled. Sad noise. And yeah, apart from things we've already mentioned, I'll also throw in The Sandman, which was much better than it really deserved to be.
Likely to be, considering how hard it is to adapt.
Considering how unfilmable I thought those comics were, it's much better than I ever expected it to be. Although, again, it's not in the top 10. Yeah, for the record, that was a good series, and I'm excited for the season 2 they're finally commissioned.
Yeah, a couple of honourable mentions. I guess, already mentioned Alice in Borderland, not finished it, assume it doesn't nosedive in the second half of the series. Yeah, also would love to echo what Nick was saying about, Sandman and Peacemaker. Big shout out to Danny Boyle for Pistol, biography of the Sex Pistols. I thought really nailed it, and wasn't the sort of heliography of the Sex Pistols. It kind of got to grip with their difficult and controversial aspects of their history, shall we say. So those were all good, but they are not in the top 5. So
no, but one thing that is my 5th favourite show of the year, which was Severance, one of those good TV shows on Apple TV that we just mentioned. This is the high concept mystery series about Adam Scott as a guy who has had his mind split into the part that goes to work and the part that doesn't, and the part that does go to work has to contend with working at this really weird cult-like company in an increasingly surreal labyrinth. This is an extremely odd TV show. It was, as I said, one of 2 sort of weird high-concept mystery shows I watched this year with Yellow Jackets, and I just felt this one felt very slightly better structured to me. It felt very slightly more like it was really keeping the tension up and pushing through, and really just giving me this sort of ongoing build towards some big reveals and some really weird twists. And Adam Scott is great in it, another guy better known for comedy, pulling out an amazing dramatic performance. I really enjoyed this.
No, I thought the show was brilliant. Yeah, absolutely loved it. Yeah, I liked how weird it was as well. It just wasn't like a regular workplace. Obviously, there's the question, why do they want them to not remember what they do when they're not at work? But it wasn't something cliched like they were working on UFOs or nuclear weapons. But the place they work is very, very weird. And I just liked how there's a room full of goats.
Yeah, the goats. There's this sort of strange, semi-idolatrous relationship they have with the founder. It's all very weird.
Yeah. So it was one of those things that, like, really, like, I felt pushed the envelope for weird, and as you say, like, great writing and performances and stuff from all the cast, and some good twists along the way.
Yeah, no, I really enjoyed watching this.
My number 5, fifth favourite TV show of the year was Andor from the Star Wars stable. The one good one they did this year. Great show. Really enjoyed it. Really got to grips with sort of the kind of political nature of the rebellion, what is it like to live under a totalitarian empire, and what sort of foments rebellion against it. Lots of great chases, space fights, all the stuff you love from Star Wars, the good bits, and also with a real kind of political edge to it, including things like the horrible prisons and the surveillance state that the empire has built. So it was good.
This is actually my number 4, so I guess sliding straight to that as well. Andor, really good series. This really, I was going to say something like you'd think they can't find a new angle on Star Wars, but to be honest, if anything, it's more that you're surprised they let them have this new angle on Star Wars after the first few shows they'd made seemed so determined to stick to a certain level of here's some more canon, here's some cameos. And then they made this, which features no real obvious cameos. I think there is at least 1 or 2 existing characters, but no like massive amounts of fan service. It does do a lot of interesting world building and talk about what it actually is to live under the Empire and how you'd react to it, and also still has some really, really good action stuff like the heist sequence in episode 6, which fucking rules.
That was a great bit of TV.
That was one of the best Star Wars action sequences in, I think, possibly the whole of the recent modern era, to be honest. That was great. This was an amazing show. Particularly as it went on and built and introduced more and more characters and broadened out the world and showed you more and more bits of this system and ways in which the Empire sucks, and shows the lead character Cassian reaching his breaking point. It really, really does become something. It's a good show.
Really exploring the possibilities of what you can do with the Star Wars universe.
Great show. Fair enough. One of the big IP winners of the year.
Yeah.
Right, so this means we now jump straight to Alistair's number 4, I think.
My 4th favourite TV show of the year. Again, it's one that's been mentioned briefly. It was Yellow Jackets, the 90s set horror mystery involving a girls' high school football team that crash in the remote wilderness, and then with parallel plots of some of the characters today, and kind of how this has affected their lives. It's creepy, it's dark, it's got mystery, it's got good characters, it's well acted, it's got a strong cast. It's all really, really good. Surprise hit of the year, it was great.
I really enjoyed this. Didn't quite make the top 5, but no, Yellow Jackets has a lot of really good, memorable, likeable characters. It's got a very strong sort of aesthetic and feeling about it. It's a very good job of building the mystery and controlling what it's withholding and getting you to look towards certain details and then fainting back towards them. It's also got some great performances. Christina Ricci as Misty is the obvious scene-stealing one, but there's a lot of good people doing this.
Juliette Lewis as well playing and I thought the young cast were really good as well. So
has to say, not on my list, but definitely fully approved. Okay, and for number 3, returning to the homeland of UK TV for at least one brief stop, we are of course talking about Derry Girls, the Channel 4 sitcom about a group of teenagers growing up in the 90s. Yes, just like in Yellow Jackets, only with slightly less cannibalism, but there's some bombing instead. So this had its final 6-episode series this year, plus the final special, which was Derry Girls, The Agreement, I think, which focused on the referendum over the peace process. And this was a great ending to a great series. I laughed and then predictably I cried, and if you can get me to do both of those things, you'll probably get a good review. And here we are at number 3.
Yes, this is also my 3rd favourite TV show of the year. I thought it was brilliant. A brilliant ending to a brilliant run. Classics or sitcom format. 3 series, 6 episodes a series. Keep it nice, keep it tight. No bad episodes, no filler. All brilliant comedy. With that, then special hour-long finale on the end, wrapping up the peace process. Really elevates that show into the real top tier of comedy alongside, Blackadder, Father Ted, Simpsons when it was at its best. I thought, the way it weaves in like politics into it's humorous, it's funny. Great characters, brings in the history and the politics of the peace process. And there's a sort of commentary on nostalgia in that it's full of 90s nostalgia and like soundtrack, fashion, references. But at the same time, the fact that like it also shows how grim and dark, the 90s were, especially in Northern Ireland. It's commenting on how we don't remember the past accurately through nostalgia. So the whole thing's almost like a meta point about 90s nostalgia.
The emotion is there, but it never overwhelms it. It never becomes preachy. The comedy never stops being funny. It's always rooted in the characters are all incredibly good and likeable. This all stands, of course, in sharp contrast to Don't Look Up. And this was excellent. I really liked it, and that was your next one as well.
So we're equal on 3 Derry Girls. So
Okay, cool. Right, well, back to me then. And it's number 2, and it is The Bear, the 6-episode series about people getting angry in a kitchen, which we watched a couple of months ago. And yeah, I really like this. I found it very involving. I found myself very heart in mouth a lot of the time in like the back half of the season, as the tensions between the various members of the ensemble, all of which you've sort of become quite attached to and learnt all the various foibles of over the course of the series, and it all comes to a boil. It's all very well done, and yes, I found this enchanting to watch. I absolutely loved this. This was one of the best sort of character dramas of the year for me.
Yeah, it was really good. Also, one of those shows that was vying strongly for the 5th place in the list and narrowly lost out. It was absolutely great. Yeah, brilliant mix of comedy, drama. Really got across how stressful and difficult it is working in a kitchen. And I really liked the sort of, again, the politics but done in a sort of cultural, slightly removed setting that, you know, the main character, he's come from this New York elite chefing background, you know, kind of one of those sort of, you know, he's, you know, apprenticed under one of those sort of Heston Blumenthal sort of gastronomical genius type people, but now he's putting, you know, meat in bread for builders and teachers and things like that, you know, blue collar food, but he's trying to in some ways elevate that, but not in a pretentious way. And you know, there's definitely underneath the surface the kind of cultural political divides in America that's expressed through food and kitchen politics.
Yeah, which is interesting, only because the main character doesn't really express that much snobbery about this.
No.
He never says, I'm too good for this. This is always sort of projected onto him by some, especially one of the other characters.
Yeah.
Who I think feels constantly irrationally angry that he's, you know, being snobby towards them just by being there.
Well, he wants to change things, which is the thing, and obviously he wants to change things. Other characters say, "Oh, you want to change things. That means you must say that what came before is bad and should be destroyed." And he's like, "No, but I do also think you have to grow. Things can't stay the same ever." It's kind of really digging down to that philosophical level that sits below politics, the desire for change versus the desire for things to stay the same, and why those things are necessary, but also how they come into conflict. So it's and you know, funny, dark, stressful. It's up there with like Uncut Gems of one of those things. It's, you know, it's so tense, it's almost not fun at times.
Well, yeah, the technical level of the way they portray the extreme tension, the close-ups, the constant cutaways, the things happening around the kitchen to just drive home how busy it is, the brilliant one-take episode they did towards the end of the season when everything just went completely to shit. Yeah, no, I thought this was one of the highlights of the year, and hence here it is at number 2.
So yeah, for my number 2, I talked about how hard it was to get into the top 5 and how difficult it was to choose 5 shows, and the competition, especially in that 5th place, the one to get just on the list. It was also incredibly difficult to choose the top show of the year. There were 2 very strong contenders, and if anything, they were pretty much equal. They're very different shows, but I enjoyed them both enormously, and it's hard to choose. But here we are, and we do have to choose. So, my second favourite show of the year was Better Call Saul. I thought it was brilliant. The ending was staggeringly good. It wrapped up everything with Breaking Bad. The show itself, it was heart-wrenching, it was moving. It sent off the character in a way that kind of gave him a fitting ending, with also acknowledging all the terrible things he'd done and the terrible things that had happened. And it was a tall order, but they absolutely nailed that landing.
No, I love this. This was my number 1. We have now reached the top of my list. This was great. This was incredibly tense from beginning to end. I remember vividly sitting down to watch all 13 episodes of this and being excited the day they came out and watching them as soon as I could, and just being sort of like I just said about the bear, absolutely just heart in mouth on edge to see what was going to happen to these criminals and idiots in the course of this final season. It's been up and down on Better Call Saul over the course of its run, as occasionally I felt like they were going a bit too prequely, or some of the storylines were less involving than others, but yeah, I mean, this is the pinnacle, this is the end. This is, in some ways, they're almost elevating the previous runs by showing what they were going towards, where everything just snaps together, and it's a beautiful ending. It's incredibly well done. From the sort of opening section where they have this big long con to the where it all pays off, and then the sort of sad black and white coda that ends everything, and the end of the character journey for the main character, along with Kim, played by Ray Seahorn, and indeed Nacho, played by Michael Mando, who goes out early, thus risking being overshadowed, but nonetheless he goes out well. It's a very, very good episode. And yeah, this was great. This was, again, not a surprising number 1 for me to choose. A TV highlight of the year for many, and including me.
Yeah, brilliant all over. Yeah, especially the black and white coda. I mean, that's when I think it went from really, really good to sublime. That kind of, you know, the way it wrapped up at the end and tied it all together. Yeah.
Yeah, no, as I think I said during our review, I kept waiting for them to find an excuse to sort of get out of the black and white mode, but no, they did. Was it 3, maybe even 4 episodes at the end?
Yeah.
Fully in that. Yeah.
Fully black and white. Yeah. They made it work right to the end.
Yeah. Right. So now That was my number one, so yeah, we are now just left with the suspense of Alistair's number one show of the year.
It's also a show I thought was brilliant. Different show, obviously, but really hard. And again, it's really hard to make. Is this going to be number one? Is it going to be number two? And it's a show that's already been mentioned. It's Severance. Which I thought was just amazing. Yeah, I just really liked how philosophical it was. Explore who are we? Are we different people at work? Are you different people if you don't remember? I saw someone describing this on Twitter, and I can't remember who it is to give them credit. So saying that this does for the philosophy of the mind what The Good Place did for moral philosophy. And yeah, it's just such an interesting, bizarre show. Again, not something I was particularly aware of before, or just that kind of. There was some buzz about this was good, and I thought well, yeah, I'll watch it. People seem to like this. And then I wasn't prepared for how good it would be and how it would just grab my attention. And yeah, I can't wait for the second season. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I started watching this. Obviously, I've already mentioned it. It was my number 5. Yeah, and yeah, I thought, okay, this is good. This is interesting, but is this going to get boring? Just these people in this room for a whole season, and not really. No, I was wrapped with attention the whole time. The last episode especially is just brilliant. The level of tension they built over the course of the whole season just explodes in this final rush of these final revelations and these desperate panics. But yeah, it's just great. It was a great show. I'm interested to see where they can possibly go with it next.
Yeah. Everything from the twist right at the end of the penultimate episode right through the final episode to the twist in the last minutes or seconds even of the first series is they nailed that.
Yeah, no, great series. No arguments here. Right, so in terms of a consensus,
I think Better Call Saul is the clear favourite.
That's definitely
very close to being number one.
The most high rankings, yeah. And then after that, is it Derry Girls and Severance in some order?
I think so, yeah. I mean, we both agreed on Derry Girls being very high, and I think Derry Girls deserves that level of recognition. Like I say, I don't use these words lightly. That is in the same bracket as Blackadder, Father Ted.
Yeah, I think it's going to endure. I think, especially because it's had the sense to finish on that massive high. I think it'll probably endure. Okay, so yeah. Saul, Derry Girls, Severance, or Severance was your number one. Do you want to go Saul, Severance, Derry Girls?
Yeah, I'll accept that. Yeah, sounds good to me. Yeah.
Probably Derry Girls was number 3 on
both of our lists.
Oh, yeah, okay, fine. That seems to be consensus, if nothing else. Okay, fine. Yep, those are the big 3 then. Better Call Saul, Severance, Derry Girls. Miss them, miss out. Okay, and that's it for Moderate Fantasy Violence this time, and indeed this year. You will of course be listening to this in 2023, so don't unpick that too hard. But yeah, if you have enjoyed this show, then why not go to our website at moderatefantasyviolence.com, where you can find years and years of previous podcasts, along with our written wrap-ups of the year, Alistair in film, me in TV, and again, many things from previous years doing the same. And if you particularly enjoyed that experience, why not go to your podcast application of choice, especially Apple I hear, but really any of them, and just leave us a nice 5-star review. You know you want to. Thank you.
You can also get more of us on Twitter, where we are at MFV Podcast, or on Facebook by searching for Moderate Fantasy Violence. You can get more from me on Twitter, where I'm at Alistair J.R. Ball, or find more of my writing at redtrainblog.com.
And you can follow me at NickMB on Twitter, nickbryan.com on the wider internet, where there will no doubt be more crowdfunded comics in 2023. And yep, speaking of which, we will see you in 2023 with our first episode of the new year, in which we will be covering the new Netflix movie White Noise and the second season of Apple TV spy show Slow Horses. See you then for that. Happy New Year and goodbye.
Happy New Year.
Okay, and number 3 for me this year, returning to the homeland of British TV for a brief stop. Actually, no.
If it's the show you think it is technically British TV, I think.
Isn't it? Great Britain is.
Oh, well, yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. That'll make for an intro. It is UK TV.